Okay, I'm back with another episode of Felons Talk. The hell is that? That's my computer, right? I don't even know what's going on with that thing. Anyway, I'm back, man. I got a call today from John Grashner. It's been like 4 hours ago, right? And I was in the middle of shopping. I was out shopping. I said, call me back a little bit later and we'll talk, man, and everything. Well, I'm waiting and I'm still not hearing from him. I wonder if they've taken me off of his phone list again. Maybe they like recognize my voice on the phone with him. I don't know. It just seems weird that he hasn't called me back yet. And I'm really upset because, man, we just got him back and it's looking a little sketchy right now, right? Oh my God. Anyway, I had um, a guy I was going to interview today who knew John, who did time with John, and he had a pretty funny story about doing time with him. And I wanted to get him on here and let him tell his story, but he uh, he wasn't available today. So sometime later in the week, maybe we're going to do a show with him. But right now, I'm just going to do a little show about uh, sex offenders in the federal prison system. Sex offenders in the when I was going to back when I did my time, I was in from 74 to 2003. There were no sex offenders. I mean, there were some, right? Uh, Here and there, you might find someone who had a sex offense. Quite a few of them would be Indians because a lot of, on the reservation, there were like sexual assaults and they would come into the federal system. Uh, in order to be considered a federal crime, the sex offense has to be on a federal reservation, like Yellowstone Park or something like that. I'm sure there was some Washington D.C. guys that had rape cases too, right? Uh, that got sent into the federal system. But there were like there may be a case like with a kidnapping and a robbery across state lines where a victim may have been raped. Far few and in between are these because most of those types of rapes get prosecuted by the state. The state prosecutes those types of sexual offenses. Like I said, I got out in '03. I remember hearing two people just before I got out, like within the last 3 years of my, you know, that I was in prison, who had been found to be some type of sexual predator, and they got the shit beat out of them, and they got run off the compound. One of them got beat up really, really bad, and that guy there was, he. I mean, they locked up the guy who did it, and I imagine they probably charged him with a crime too, because he hurt the guy real bad. And when I got out, cell phones were just beginning to become something that everybody could have. Uh, I got a job selling cell phones for T-Mobile, and it was so simple to sell them. First of all, I didn't have to sell the phone itself. The phone was free. I give them a free phone and sign them up with a 2-year contract, and I get $30. I did a lot of that. I think in 2006 I made $83,500. That's how many phones that I was able to sell. I mean, contracts that I was, because the contract was worth like $400 to my company. Uh, and me as a salesperson, I got like a $30 uh, uh, piece of that 400. Uh, the point being that uh, the whole uh, internet and all that stuff, the technology uh, of the day back in the early 2000s, it was just becoming like a point where like you could you know like I got my first computer. When was it? About 2000, and maybe it was 2004. Might have been 2005. Uh, and I didn't even. I mean, like I did get a computer. This is not my first. That was my first computer, but this is my first laptop. The I mean, I don't know anything. Still to this day, don't know a whole lot about computers. I mean, it's amazing. I had to look for the question mark button on the keypad. It took me 5 minutes to find it today. It's ridiculous how you know. But for the generation before me, this is really simple stuff. And what I'm trying to get to in the whole purpose of this conversation is the fact that internet pedophiles, internet pedophiles are what's becoming a big thing in the federal system now. Just like I told you guys that in the earlier days of my incarceration, most of the guys in prison were there for bank robbery, you know, uh, and as time progressed, there were more drug and gun cases. As so, like, there's still federal bank robbery cases, but they're far few and in between. Uh, the point that I'm making here is that now we have like probably thousands of pedophiles in federal prison. And there are special prisons for these guys. Uh, one of them is Marion, Illinois. Marion, Illinois used to be the killing ground. It was like Vietnam. There were so many murders and it's got a really small population. I believe when I went to Marion, the prison held 380 inmates in single cells. That's a tiny prison, man, compared to like Leavenworth or Lewisburg or Atlanta. That's a tiny prison. Uh, but the point being that now it's not a killer's joint anymore. Now it's a sex offender's joint. And the guys that are there are sex offenders. I think they have programs that they have to attend, to try to get them to stop being pedophiles, if that's even possible. So there's that prison. There's one in Tucson, Arizona. Numerous sex offenders there, but that's called a dropout yard too. A lot of high-profile inmates are in the Tucson facility. I'm talking about big mafia rats, like I forgot the guy's name, but he had died during the COVID virus. I know people there that are dropouts that have testified against people. Larry Vaughn, big snitch in the that was Aryan Brotherhood, testified. I mean, a couple of murder cases, big ones, and yeah, I mean, so they put them on yards where there's a bunch of sex offenders because there's nowhere else they can go. Okay, If you can't get along with these sex offenders, we'll send you to one of them prisons like Lee County or bloody Beaumont, uh, or one of them places where people are getting stabbed every day for just looking at somebody, you know. And snitches can't make it on yards like that. They just can't, you know. Neither can sex offenders. So they put them all in that one prison in Tucson. There may be others as well that I don't know about. You know, I'm not really keeping track of sex offenders that closely. But the thing is, there's it's become a thing, and these pedophiles, these sex offenders, generally aren't actually touching kids personally. They're just doing it through the internet. Their fantasies of kids and sexual in, interactions with children are done strictly through the fucking computer system. See, so they're not like the hands-on pedophiles that you would want. You know, you watch your kids and all that stuff. But the point being that you know that's the difference in how the federal prison system has progressed over the years. It has been. I just hope John can call me back, man. I just can't. I can't believe this is fucking happening, man. He still might call. I mean, who knows? The phone might ring any minute. It just doesn't seem right, man, that he hasn't called me back yet. And I'll find out by tomorrow, one way or another. I'll find out. I'm kind of disappointed, man. I was hoping to do a good show with him today. Anyway, there was some other stuff I wanted to talk about, and oh, the murder of Tony Spilotro. Okay, I was in a prison in Illinois. My last 5 years of incarceration was in a prison in Illinois called Pekin. Pekin, Illinois is about, I don't know, 30, 40 miles from St. Louis. I did my last 5 years there, a medium security prison. And the whole Chicago mob was there with me, right? And this was, I guess, 2001. And I was walking the track with a guy by the name of, the hell was his name? Harry Alaman, Aleman. They call him Harry the Hitman. Hitman Harry Alaman. Look him up, Google him. He was a hitman for the Chicago mob. Small guy, like, you know, not big. We're walking the yard together, man, and he's telling me that Nikki Calabrese just got called up by the FBI to the front of the, you know, to the front offices of the prison for a, you know, sit down and, you know, whatever. They wanted to, they had some questions that they wanted to ask him apparently, and he didn't come back for like 3 hours. Does that sound like he told them, hey, fuck you, I don't want to talk to you, let me go back to my cell? No, it doesn't. And here, this was the one day, and then the following day, it happened again. He went up there, talked to him for several hours, and he came back. And let me explain something to you. Nikki Calabrese and Jimmy Marcello, who later became the big boss of the Chicago outfit, were cell partners in another cell block. They never came to the mess hall because they were, you know, gangsters, and gangsters don't eat with everybody else. They have the food brought to their cell. They pay everybody, and you know, everything is, you know, they get that kind of respect around there. So anyway, these guys are uh, doing their thing. They're very, very close. They go to the yard every day and they sit with the other mob guys, Bobby Bellavia and whoever else was there. I can't remember. But they sit out there and and they got their little mob hangout, their little mob clique, right? And and they talk and they chat. And there was a guy, an older man who lived in my unit, who apparently the FBI called him out one day and they asked him, well, I don't know what all they talked to him about. I really don't. But apparently they wanted him to come and wear a wire in the prison and get some info, because he used to hang with those guys, with the mob guys. He was a Chicago guy. He was, he was part of that set that, and he was accepted by them, so he could hang out with them. Well, they asked him to wear a wire, right? And he came back in and he told them all. He said, listen, they're wanting me to wear a wire. They want me to wear a wire on you guys. Well, one thing led to another, and they came up with the idea, like, why are they asking this guy to wear a wire? Like, they don't usually just do that unless you're already somebody that they feel would be interested in doing something like that. So he must already have some kind of background in helping the FBI, providing information to the FBI. That became immediately a suspicion that everybody already had, right? And people started staying away from him. The word went out all over the compound. And next thing you know, they snatched him up and we never saw him again. Okay. They transferred him down to Coleman, Florida. There's a snitch unit down there too. I think it's Coleman Medium. The medium security is basically considered a snitch yard, dropout yard. Might be sex offenders too. I don't know. But that was where they put him. And so this was something new. Okay. But they were trying to get him to be an informant. So apparently there was something, the government had some kind of investigation into these guys, right? Well, then they come and they start pulling Nikki Calabrese out, and he start talking to him, right? He's out there too. I think the third day he went to be interviewed by the FBI, he never returned. Nobody saw him again after that. So that's kind of what me and little Harry the hitman, that's what we were kind of chatting about on the yard while we were walking around. And nobody really understood what was, happening, but it was pretty obvious that he might be cooperating with the federal government. And so for the next, I'm going to say the next several weeks, there were articles in the Chicago Sun-Times about bodies being discovered that had been people that had been missing for 10, 15, 20 years. They were going, they were digging up their bodies and finding them here and there and all over the place. I think it was like 4 different bodies. It happened in a couple of weeks. And it kept saying, on the word of a confidential informant, they went to this grave site, they dug it, and yeah, they found this guy here. And then they went to another grave site and they dug it up, and on the word of a confidential informant. This was in the Chicago Sun-Times every every week, for about 4 or 5 weeks. And everybody knew. Everybody knew. Well, who could this informant possibly be? It wouldn't be Nikki Calabrese, would it? And of course it would. It was him. And what ended up happening was that Nikki's nephew and his brother were in another institution called Milan, Michigan. Uh, and the son, I forgot his name is, I think his name is Bobby or something. Maybe it's, yeah, Bobby, or I don't know. The son and Nikki's nephew, uh, Nikki's brother and Nikki's nephew were both in that institution, and they were walking they were living. They both had a federal sentence, and what had happened was the kid uh, hated his father and did not want to go back to that life that he had been living before. So he began to wear a wire in the prison. Again, there's a guy wearing a wire inside the penitentiary against his own father. And one of the things that they were discussing was the murder of a guy in this is a murder committed by Nikki Calabrese. So what had happened was when Nikki shot the guy, apparently he accidentally shot himself in his arm, and there was a bloody glove similar to the bloody glove that was that guy, the big, I can't think of his name right now, in California with the bloody glove, it killed his wife. Anyway, you get the picture. They found the bloody glove. Well, this happened many years before. Okay, this murder had happened like in the I think it was the late 80s or early 90s. There was no, put it this way, it happened before they had DNA testing. So the glove was still in a property room in the police station, the evidence room. It was still in the evidence room of the police station. They found the glove at the murder scene, and it was still part of a cold case investigation. So they go back and they take the glove. Now they have DNA. Now they have that proficiency where they can test that bloody glove. And guess what? The murder was committed by Nikki Calabrese. It had his blood on the glove. There's no question about it. And there was also an abundance of other evidence given by his nephew. So that's why they came to visit him and try to make him a deal. And they told him, listen, because this guy was short. He was going home real soon. Same way with Jimmy Marcello. Jimmy Marcello and him. I think Jimmy had like 11 years in. He was going home the following year. Same with this guy. They were going home early. I mean, they didn't have long sentences. Anyway, Jimmy was slated to be the next head of the outfit. When he got out, he was taking the reins. Okay, so Nikki disappeared into the witness protection program. He had agreed to cooperate in order to not be charged with that murder and die in prison. He made that choice. And we all knew it. It was pretty obvious, We'd look over and we'd look at Jimmy. Jimmy would just shrug his shoulders and shake his head. Like, what can I tell you? I don't know, Turns out that Jimmy ended up getting out of prison. Okay. Everybody got out of prison. The father, the son, the uncle, they all got out. Okay. And then eventually they had the big indictment called the Family Secrets trial in Chicago. Big indictment came down. Numerous, like maybe 20 murders. Big RICO conspiracy going back 20, 30 years. It involved all the top guys in the Chicago mob. I think there's like 7 of them at the defense table. Huge trial. Uh, the main witness was the son and the uncle. I think it was named Bobby Calabrese and then Nikki Calabrese. He told on his father, his uncle, and everybody else. And one of the murders in that indictment were the Spilotro brothers murders. The Spilotro brother murders was the ones from the movie Casino, where Joe Pesci, at the end of the movie, gets killed and thrown into the grave. And anyway, that was 2 of the murders in the indictment, and apparently both Jimmy Marcello and Nikki Calabrese were both there at that murder, and they brought him to a house in, I don't know where, some suburb of Chicago, and on a pretext of making him a boss or something, and then they walked him down into the cellar, and there were a bunch of guys down there, and they just beat him to death, killed him right there. I believe Tony asked if he could say a prayer before they strangled his brother to death, and then they went to work on Tony, and Tony just asked if he could, maybe say a prayer before. This was all like given up as part of the testimony of actually what happened, because Nikki was actually there when they did that. Anyway, to make a long story short, Jimmy Marcello is now a free man. He had gotten out. He was living in Chicago. He was doing great. He was a multimillionaire. He was the head of the Chicago mob. So they arrest him and they bring him in. They give him a $6 million bail. $6 million. That night, he put up the bond in properties. He owned all kinds of stores, restaurants, you name it, he owned it. Buildings, condos, whatever. And just before they got ready to let Jimmy out of jail on bond, the prosecutor got on the phone and called the judge and said, "Your Honor, we didn't think he'd be able to make a $6 million bail, but apparently he has come up with the collateral to do so. And this man has been involved in the murder of numerous witnesses. We can't allow him to be sent back to the free world where he might, kill some more people." And so that's what happened. They stopped it right there. Jimmy never walked out the door. He was confined in the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Chicago until his trial, and where he lost, and now he's doing life, and all that money ain't doing him no good. Okay. Nikki Calabrese pled guilty to 12 counts of murder, and he was given 1 year for each of those counts. 1 year. That was how they paid him off for all his testimony. And he brought the house down, believe me, with his testimony. Nikki died about a year ago of old age or something. The 12 years that he got, I don't know if it was running consecutive. They might have backdated that. I think he got out pretty quickly after he testified. After those convictions were settled, I think he was more or less released from prison into the witness protection program. And he lived his life somewhere in America. Nobody actually knows. We might be able to find out by looking on the internet. Maybe they'll have some information about it. I never bothered to look. But that's the story. And listen, guys, I really am so fucked up about John not being able to come on, man. But I'm going to close this now because it's just getting too long. It's 30 minutes. And I'll see you guys tomorrow, the next day, with another story from Felons Talk.